All right, everyone, we're just a minute or two past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Adam Hops with the National Operations Center of Excellence. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinars on crowdsourcing data for work zone operations. Much appreciation to Greg Jones and the EDC team over at FHWA for continuing to allow NOCO to host these webinars. There's been quite a few in the recent series presentations that are available on the NOCO YouTube site. There's a link in the chat box there under previous webinars that can be found. As with previous webinars, this is being recorded. The recording will be available and posted along with the presentations. And the best way to make sure to access that as quickly as possible is to sign up for the NOCO newsletter on our website. So go ahead and do that if you want to access the webinar to share with colleagues. Before we get started and I hand it over to Greg, a few reminders for those for those of you who perhaps haven't joined a NOCO webinar. We moved over to the Zoom platform, as you can see. Thank you so much for making the switch over here. A couple of new features for that. First, you should have access to closed captioning available with the closed captioning button on your Zoom portal, whether you're desktop or using the Zoom application. So be sure to check that out. Additionally, there's two ways to contact us throughout the webinar. The first is the chat box where I'm putting links. That's a great spot to add a comment, access links, share any ideas that you might have, any questions that you have for me or the panelists about the webinar, making sure the webinar works should go in there. Anything that's a direct question for Greg or for our panelists today should go in the Q&A box, the separate Q&A box that's up there. That way we can track your questions, make sure that we answer everything in there. So again, direct questions for the presenters, put those in the Q&A box. Any other communications that are needed will be in the chat box there. Everybody will be muted throughout, but we do encourage you to ask questions via that Q&A. Greg, thank you so much again, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Adam. So again, welcome to Adventures in Crowdsourcing. This is webinar number 19. And as Adam mentioned, our topic today is crowdsourcing data for work zone operations. So we can move on to the next slide, please. Just a disclaimer that the U.S. government does not endorse specific products or manufacturers. They may be mentioned for purposes of just giving an idea of the things that are happening in the field, but it is not an endorsement of any particular product or manufacturer. Next, please. Today's agenda, we'll just have a little update as far as discussion of crowdsourcing. Then we'll move into the two presentations. The first being the use of ClearGuide to observe work zones in Minnesota, and the second being the Kentucky work zone management using crowdsourced data. And then we hope to have about 30 minutes for questions and answers. And again, as Adam had mentioned, please use that question and answer pod, and I'll be monitoring that, and then we'll facilitate the question and answer session at the end. So next slide, please. Today's presenters, and I'll be your host. I'm Greg Jones. I'm with the Federal Highways Office of Operations. I actually split my time with the Headquarters Office of Operations and Federal Highways Resource Center office. We'll have Brian Carey from the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and then Chris Lambert from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And I'll give them a little more formal introduction right before they start. So next slide, please. For those of you that may not know, Everyday Counts has been a initiative by the Federal Highway Administration. We're in year 12 now. They're 2-year increments. So this is Everyday Counts round 6. So this is year 11 and 12. We are in the latter part of the initiative for round 6. There's about 5 months left. It'll end at this end of this calendar year. The Everyday Counts program is a state and local based model that identifies and deploys proven but somewhat underutilized innovations. And the objectives of that are to shorten project delivery or enhance roadway safety, reduce traffic congestion, or integrate automation. The next slide, please. So why was crowdsourcing for operations chosen? Actually, this is the second round of the crowdsourcing for operations. Every Day Counts 5, which ended a year and a half ago, was the first iteration, and we're in the second iteration now. But the thought was crowdsourcing was proven to improve operations, to increase safety and reliability, and to save costs. And next slide, please. Specific application areas. If we can go back one, please. I think we skipped a slide. Yeah. Specific application areas started out mainly with traffic incident management and traveler information. Those were the most robust applications at the time we started 3.5 years ago. But since that time, we've seen other application areas come about using the data for traffic studies, for performance management, road weather management, and arterial management. And then if we go to the next slide, there's other applications such as freeway management, work zone management, road and ITS maintenance, planning process with project prioritization, emergency management, and there could be other applications come about before we finish up in approximately 5 months. It has been exciting time as we've gone through this and to see these new applications come about. So next slide, please. So just a little bit of information about upcoming resources. Our next webinar is scheduled for August 17th. The topic for that is data for arterial operations, and it will be in the same time frame as today, 1 to 2:30 Eastern time. And also, I would just like to mention that we do have a new training course that's been developed, and it's a crowdsourcing for operations course that was developed more for the local agencies, and they're gaining knowledge of the crowdsourcing capabilities for operations. It was set up where it could be done in a modular fashion and could be given anywhere from 1 to 4 to 5 hours in length. Adam just put a link in the chat pod if you have some interest in this and would like to request more information or help with course delivery. We have that availability through the end of the year. And next slide, please. So let's go on to our presentation. So first up will be Brian Carey. Brian is the director of the Regional Transportation Management Center for Traffic Operations for the Minnesota DOT. He's worked there at MnDOT now since 1999. His work with the department has included working with freeway operations, traffic analysis, incident management. In his current position, Mr. Carey oversees the daily operations of the RTMC, and that includes their MinPass system, their FIRST program, grant metering, and the freeway operations group. He also has oversight over design and integration of new traffic management systems deployed by MnDOT. So Brian, let me turn it over to you, and I think you're going to share your screen. And
yep, that's correct. Thank you, Craig. Okay, I'll start with my PowerPoint slide, so hopefully that's what you're seeing. So MnDOT has been using the Clear Guide program for about 3 years now. It's a product from Iteris, and it actually utilizes the HERE probe data. So this is very similar to like some of the INREX tools or RIDIS tools that you've probably seen or may already be using as well. To give you kind of a sense of how we're using it here in Minnesota, we have the real-time data coming from here. We get data within 5 minutes. It is for all state highways statewide. And we've also found that in some of our metro areas that they've also given us access to some of our more local roads as well, some of our higher volume local roads, whether it's county or city roads, which has been real nice in terms of being able to monitor any kind of detour routes that may be occurring because of a work zone on the state highway system. And so some of the areas of how we've been using Iteris ClearGuide, we use it to identify locations of recurring congestion, whether it's bottlenecks or poor signal timing. We use it for tracking delays during work zones, both within the work zone and on the detour routes. That's what I'll be kind of focusing on today. We've used it for conducting before and after studies of signal retiming benefits, and also looking at it to measure delays due to traffic incidents or due to weather. So we've used it for like incident management debriefings, but also even kind of used it to look at some of the impacts that like snowstorms can have even in kind of greater Minnesota outside the Twin Cities metro area. We also did a project where we integrated it with our IRIS software. So IRIS is our ATMS software system that controls our changeable message signs as well as all of our field devices. And so we had Iteris develop a module both within IRIS and also within ClearGuide to be able to calculate travel times using the HERE probe data. So historically, our travel times were calculated using just our traffic sensor data, which really limited us to just kind of metro area freeways only. So we couldn't do anything in arterials. We couldn't really do anything outside of the metro. And also work zones were always a challenge in that we would either lose our detection or we'd have to put in temporary detection and pay a lot of money for that temporary detection to keep our travel times up and running. So this has been a nice feature for us in being able to kind of expand where we can do travel times by utilizing that HERE data as opposed to just being limited to the traffic sensor data. Another tool that we use that's similar, uses kind of the similar probe data is Streetlight. And so I kind of threw this slide in here just at the end here before I show the actual ClearGuide demo. Streetlights used more for origin destination patterns. You can also look at like bike ped and transit data as well. Get a sense for where folks are coming from in terms of who's using the corridor. It's a great kind of planning tool, provides some basic travel time data along corridors in kind of 15-minute intervals. But there is a little bit of a lag time. It takes them a while to compile that data. They kind of provide it like a month at a time. So there's a few weeks there. So it's really good for a planning tool, but maybe not the best for like a real-time data analysis, especially when you're looking at like your work zones and stuff. So that's why we kind of went with ClearGuide, which gets us things in more real-time data. We're also able to use it for providing those travel times, but also in that real-time monitoring that we can watch things as they're happening. So I kind of liken it to two screwdrivers here. They're both very similar, but they do kind of have kind of separate utility to them. And that was kind of a challenge for us in terms of trying to request to upper staff that, hey, we need money for Streetlight. Hey, we need money for ClearGuide. Well, aren't they kind of the same thing? They're all using cellular probe data. And it's really, beyond that raw data, they have quite a bit of difference when it gets to actually the reporting tools and what they're capable of and what their uses are. Both very useful tools in their own right, but they do have their different intents. So with that, I'm going to focus more on the ClearGuide one because like I said, that's more of the one that we're going to be using for kind of work zone analysis, especially when we're looking at things in more real time. So I'm going to switch to a web browser here and talk through the different screens here for ClearGuide. So this is kind of the base map showing the routes that are available on ClearGuide. If I kind of back out, you can see more of the state of Minnesota, although some of the routes start to disappear at that zoom level. But if I zoom in on the Twin Cities, you'll start to see more of those secondary routes coming up besides just the freeways and interstates, and even getting closer down into the downtown areas where a lot of the downtown grid starts to show up and such. One project in particular that just started on Monday, I can show you here live, is on our east end of the cities here, between the cities and the Wisconsin border. Just started up a permanent lane closure that'll last for the next few months. And so I can go back and kind of show you here in real time the congestion delays here as I kind of slide my cursor over. So you can see the amount of congestion we've got here eastbound for about a 5-6 mile stretch of I-94 with some pretty significant delays there. So I can dig into that a little deeper and see the travel times. But one of the things I wanted to kind of show was the ability to also look at this county road to the north and seeing this red as well, and trying to get an understanding, well, is that kind of typical for this route, or is that something that's diverting traffic that's going to that corridor? So I can very quickly create a route, much like you would do like in Google Maps, just start and endpoints. It snaps a line to that corridor. I can also have that follow like a different path if I wanted to too, and not just necessarily follow one corridor, but multiple corridors. And then once I hit create, then I can go in and look at some of the data related to that. And so I already did that in advance, so we didn't have to sit here and watch it think. But this is the travel times over the last 7 days. So starting like the middle of last week. And so you can see this corridor, typically doesn't have much congestion on it. It's pretty much just free flowing. But starting on Monday, we started seeing some backups there, about a 20-minute delay, 30-minute travel time over what would normally be about a 10-minute travel time. So that was the same time that our 94 construction started. So it would look like that, yes, this route is seeing additional congestion on this county road compared to what it would normally experience because of that congestion or because of that construction rather on the interstate. So it's a very quick and easy tool to be able to kind of monitor that overall performance of the region and not just the route in question. A couple other tools. This map is showing travel time index. This is actually from May of 2021 in the afternoon. And so anything in red is showing a travel time index greater than 1.5. And then the color gradations you can see on the legend down below, which are customizable. But then I compared that to from May of 2021 to May of 2022. Whoops, I guess I missed one here. Sorry about that. I'll got my tabs in the wrong order here. This chart is actually a new one that we're just kind of experimenting with here now. I might as well kind of talk about it a little bit. This is a new product from Iteris where they can show more of the raw speed data. Normally our speed data just shows us kind of what the average speed is out there. Very good for traffic operations in terms of looking at travel times and travel time reliability. But what it doesn't really tell you is in terms of enforcement. It doesn't tell you like what percentile people are driving over the speed limit or what percentile are driving over a certain speed. So this map is showing areas, the percentile of traffic that are driving greater than 85 miles an hour. So that would be, anything that's kind of highlighted in those darker purples would be areas that we might want to focus in on added enforcement, and can be especially useful if looking at like work zones, if we want to do some increased work zone enforcement. So that's a new tool that we just started demoing ourselves, so we haven't even really dug into it much, but another product from Iteris here. Here's the two I wanted to compare. So this is May of 2021, and then May of 2022. That other tab got kind of snuck in between the two there. But we can see kind of the increased amount of travel time index due to just traffic volume slowly kind of returning to normal. Seems like the Twin Cities has been kind of slower maybe than some other cities in returning to normal post-COVID. We're still down by about 2 to 3% or so, which is still creating about much more significant decrease in congestion. But the one area in particular is in this Northwest Metro. You can see all this red from last year. That was a stretch of roadway that was under construction. And then, now this year it's improved because the construction is over. So another kind of work zone application there. Digging a little bit more into the details. This is a corridor on East 494 down in the Southeast Metro of the Twin Cities. You can see it's normally been pretty light in terms of congestion, but then starting on June 7th, we got some pretty significant congestion. And so this is a contour plot, showing the congestion levels over time and space. And I can see it, on a day-to-day basis. The project lasted for about 2.5 weeks. So you can see by the 28th, things got kind of back to normal. But you can definitely see the amount of congestion and delay that was caused, especially on that first day. And if I click on it, then I can zoom in a little bit closer and just see that one day in particular. So I can kind of hover over it and see, at 6:45 in the morning, congestion was starting, and there was really congestion all the way until 7:50 at night. So really, 12 plus hours of congestion. And then I can see how far back it's going. There's kind of a distance mile here. So it's starting at like mile marker 7, going back to about 5. But at its worst extent, it's going back to kind of the beginning of the corridor there. So a good 7 miles of backup. If I want to look at that in a different way, I've got the travel times as well. So here's kind of similar to the plot I showed earlier with that detour route, but this is on Interstate 494, where our travel time shot through the roof here of being greater than an hour. for a corridor that normally takes only about 11 minutes. So there was well over an hour of delay on those first couple of days. And then you can see as people find new routes or maybe change their time of day of travel, things get a little bit better as the week goes on. But still some pretty major delays from that project. It's a river crossing, 4 lanes in the eastbound direction that was taken down to 2 lanes. So a pretty substantial capacity restriction due to that work zone. This one here, not a whole lot to see here, but what this is a list of alerts that I've set up. What it does is I can go into these and set up like what routes I want as part of this alert. I can set up like what thresholds. I can have it send out an email alert if I have excessive delay, high travel time, low speed, unusual congestion, or if there's a closure on that route. This is a new feature. We've had ClearGuide for about 3 years, like I said, but this one we just activated in the last month. And so you can set some of the thresholds yourself. Still kind of tweaking, trying to figure out what the best threshold is so you don't get too many false positives and stuff. But it's a way that we can kind of monitor some of these work zones, and if maybe there was an incident in the work zone that caused some more excessive delay, it can send out an alert to either traffic operations folks or a project engineer, whoever I want to have this alert go to. So we're still kind of playing around with that, but that's something new that ClearGuide has to offer as well. Moving away from ClearGuide, then some of the other stuff we've done with crowdsourcing data is we're just starting to get kind of into the Waze data. We're pulling Waze into our 511 system. And so we have our citizen reports are showing up as these blue icons. So this would be anything that a Waze user would have reported. So I can see here's like a road construction activity that was reported by a Waze user. And then we've got some of these orange ones are ones that the Waze system is identifying. So the Waze system is identifying some moderate traffic jams on this corridor based on just the data they're getting back from their probe. So we kind of highlight those differently just based on the different sources. And then that shows up as a different layer from just like our regular events, like our normal road reports that we would have that would be entered in by our staff, but it helps kind of supplement that information by getting that Waze stuff in there. Right now, we're just using it as purely just displaying it to the customer, to the motorist, like you see here. We're trying to figure out kind of the next steps of, how do we make this information digestible to our operators and our TMC. We do have some filters in here that it needs to be an event that gets a lot of positive affirmations that it's out there. So it's not just like a one-time person, throwing an event in there, but that it's gotten confirmation from others. Plus, Waze users that maybe have higher credentials or whatever the term would be. So we have some filters like that so we don't get too much clutter, but we are kind of finding that there is a lot of noise in the data even yet. So we probably need to kind of, refine those thresholds a little bit, because especially on some that just say there's a stalled vehicle or there's a hazard, like a piece of debris, and we'll try to find it on camera, or we'll send one of our service patrol vehicles in the area, and a lot of them end up being kind of unfounded. So we're still trying to kind of work through that. As to what the best way is to kind of digest this Waze data so that we're not getting inundated by some of the noise that's there. So with that, let's see, I can just kind of go through a couple extra slides here to wrap up. So kind of where I left off with streetlight, just a couple of other representations. Here was a work zone on Interstate 35 north of the cities that kind of goes up towards the Duluth area. And so we were seeing kind of routine congestion on every Friday weekend, or every Friday before the weekend, as people are heading up north, or I guess in this case, actually, it's the Sunday for people coming back. So a lot of very heavy extreme delays, especially on some of those holiday weekends like Memorial Day and 4th of July. Just another kind of way of looking at it, looking at the minimum, average, and maximum speeds along that corridor, or travel times rather. This is kind of more of a just looking at it from a map basis, since it's so much work zone related, but looking at the kind of migration back to the metro after Memorial Day weekend. So we can see all the corridors that kind of head back to the metro with all people coming back from the cabins and resorts, how much additional congestion that causes. And actually the one on the right is that work zone in question. This was made worse by that single lane construction that was going through there. And here's how we've used it during blizzards. This is actually showing a speed anomaly. So it's not really showing, what the congestion is, but how the speeds varied depending on what would normally be occurring out there. And so this kind of southeast part of the state was getting hit by a blizzard, and you can see how traffic, it's not necessarily congested, but they're slowing because of the reduced visibility and snow impacts. And then the black in the lower left is actually because that section of I-90 was closed due to the storm. This is another kind of one of those monthly contour plots. This one's a little bit harder to see, but this is looking at arterial traffic data, and they did a signal retiming change on the 14th. Takes a little bit of looking at, but if you do look like at all the data after the 14th, there is a slight improvement there. So you can kind of start to see a little bit visually how the signal retiming helped improve that corridor. And that's it for me. So I'll pass it back to Greg. Or do I go straight to Chris? I think Greg was going to introduce Chris.
So it looks like Greg may be having some technical difficulties. Why don't we go ahead to Chris?
Okay.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and share screen and try to get this up here. Hope you can all see my screen. It works on monitoring. So yeah, we've been kind of testing works on monitoring in Kentucky for a few years. We have a real-time data system that's been in place for since about 2015. But then over the last few years, we've kind of tested this idea of virtual monitoring. And then this year, our division of construction really decided to jump in and kind of take hold of that and run with it. So I'll go through some of our experience here and some of our tools. Let's see. So this is some of the data that we bring in to our real-time system, and the stuff in red there, the items in red are the ones that I'm going to talk about for work zone monitoring. A few of those say pending, and this is really a work in progress. It's kind of a design build, if you will. So we're really trying to work on this idea of work zone monitoring. So some of these, even though we have the data available, we don't yet have it integrated into some of the tools that I'll show you soon in these dashboards and things, but we do have the data streaming into our system, and we've kind of analyzed some of the data for usage later. But so we're going to combine like probe data from here, Waze traffic viewer, incidents, etc. This is a general workflow of how our data comes into the system. All of our data, regardless of source, is pulled into Google Cloud, processed against our linear referencing system to give us, district, county route, mile point. We add 47 fields of data to each and every record we receive to make it very easy to combine all that data together and force relationships between different data feeds, whether that's Doppler radar or speed data, air temp, pavement temp, all those things. We kind of mix all that together. And then what is a work zone, right? So work zone, when we're talking about work zone or work area, for the most part, like our division of construction or traffic management center in the past, when we say work zone, what they're really talking about is that work area. That's the area of the pavement actually being affected or worked on. That does not include, signage or maybe tapering of barrels, that kind of stuff. So we kind of differentiate between these two. And so we've got a work area, but then we also have work zone. We extended the record. So most of our records are the work area. The area of pavement being worked on, and then we extend that area a half mile. That was a decision division of construction made. They extend the area 1/2 of a mile in both directions so that we can do queue monitoring and things as well. So this is maybe a little bit hard to read, but this is my attempt at creating a roadway and different mile points. So you've got kind of a linear representation there, but then you also have this time depth of data here, speed data and things per mile point. And we actually divide it to the 10th of a mile point. And I'll show you that shortly. And then we represent this through maps and different graphs, right? So one of the workflows we do with our data is we do pull some project data from Site Manager, Division of Construction Site Manager. That's where they pay for all the projects. That's their payment software. So we thought, well, if they're paying for it, they ought to know what's available, right? They should have really good data on what projects are active along the roadway. And sometimes there's a mismatch between our traffic management center, which has really great operational data, and then construction, which is paying for these work zones to be worked on. So what we decided to do was we pull data from the blue line is kind of the origin line, and that pulls from the division of construction, pull that into Google Cloud. We drop that in our data lake as a raw form, and then we also process this through streaming, or actually drop this into a CSV or JSON. And then our traffic management center picks this up in their software. They enhance this with operational data like right lane close, left lane close, et cetera. And then they move with that, gets pulled back into Google Cloud, processed against our linear referencing system, and then goes out to dashboards and other visualizations and analytic tools that we may have. So what is work zone monitoring? And this is where I'll jump to some of my slides. First of all, if you're a Waze partner, my suggestion is to go ahead and get started with the Waze Traffic Viewer. This is a great tool for just jumping in and let's say you don't have time to develop a large big data system and a lot of tools and things. You can immediately use the Waze Traffic Viewer tool to get in and define a work zone and then start monitoring that work zone through this dashboard. So it's kind of a quick and dirty, right? It also provides a data feed that you can pull in and process as well. So work zone monitoring for Kentucky is, I'm going to start here. I went ahead and preset some of this stuff for you, but so the first thing that our division of construction staff sees is this work zone monitoring. This is just a business intelligence tool available on Google Cloud. It's called Data Studio. It's kind of like a Power BI or Tableau. And so we're going to work zone overview, and you're going to pick a work zone from here, which I've already selected one. I've already selected this project in District 7, Clark County. And then we're able to mouse over each of these points, each 10th mile point, and get an average speed. And currently this is set to the current day. So this is everything since midnight, an average speed per 10th of a mile point today so far. And then we've got just some general metrics at the bottom. This is a little to see like average min speed, average max speed. So what we're doing there, we get data in every 2 minutes, but we have 5-minute buckets of data of aggregations, and we aggregate to the 10th of a mile. So there may be, in some cases, there may be multiple records, maybe 5 or 6 records that actually go into that due to the way that here divides their linear referencing system, the way we divide that system as well, and then also the number of records. We have at least 2 records for each of these points. So what we do is we kind of create little 5-minute 10th mile buckets. And so we're doing the average of all those min speeds, right? And the average speed overall, and then the average of the max speeds. And that kind of gives us a good measurement of how that work zone's operating. The next page is crashes. So if I wanted to go study a crash, I could look at District 6. And if I filter to District 6, it's going to pull up the one crash that's available. And then I have drill down capabilities to get more specific, gives me a work zone location, right? So that's I-75, mile points 169.4 to 178. That's the actual work zone itself. And then we've tried to do some other things with drill downs that didn't work, but that's about as far down as we want to go. If there were Waze crashes in this area, we would also see those here. There's not at the moment. Let's see, this little bar always gets in my way with, and then we've also got month mobility summaries, right? So we can pick a work zone here, like let's say District 12. We're going to click on District 12. This is out in our Eastern Kentucky area. We see min speeds are 13.5 and average speeds are 61. We don't know where that is. So we actually have one work zone out here. We can drill down. We can see the work zone itself. And we know that District 12, Lawrence County, US 23, this work zone between mile points 23.6 and 28.5. This is how this is performing. And then we can mouse over each of these 10th mile points, and we can start to understand exactly how that work zone is performing at each 10th mile. And then I think we have one more drill down on this as well, but it's probably, oh yeah, I remember this. Then we also have a per 10th mile. Right now we have these sorted by speed. So the 13, this mile point, the 28.4 mile point is the slowest, kind of the slowest moving mile point that we had in that work zone today. And this is set for today. So again, that's just a way to check mobility, kind of deep dive into the work zone itself. I'm going to switch tabs again, go to monitoring. This monitoring is set up to give you the average speeds versus free flow per day. And then this is based on the location. So I picked Franklin County and I-64 non-cardinal direction. And I'm now able to see that, like on July 14th, the average speed was 63.87 miles an hour, but the free flow was 69, right? So the expected, like the annual average is 69 miles an hour, free flow is 63. And then here I can see exactly what mile points were not performing very well. And so I can mouse over those and I can understand that. And of course, those have drill downs as well. We can get into more specific time periods. And we also take every, this is currently set to a week, but we can set it higher than that. This is giving me the average speeds per day and then per hour. So at 1 p.m. is my lowest aggregated speed, all the 1 p.m.s that I've got between 1 and 2 p.m. And then the fastest speed through this work zone is 8 p.m., which you can see they're actually speeding through there at 71.04 miles an hour. So we've got some pretty high speeds through that work zone. And then of course, same thing, I can mouse over each individual point and I can start to understand that. And then if I think I can filter here too, I can filter that specific point. This is what happens when you do a live demo. I can't remember if we had this working or not, but what the heck. Yes, so I can click on that. I can get average speeds on Wednesdays, and then I also understand my average speeds over here. So we have another page we're trying out, which is the next kind of page 2. That one had the bar graphs. This one, I think people actually like this one better, so we're probably going to keep it. This is just line graphs. Same thing, I-64, non-cardinal direction, Franklin County, and this is just today. And then I can start to understand each, every couple of minutes there. I've got speed data, and I can actually understand where something happened. So mile point 48, and then I've got, these mile points here, but then also I have when. So this gives me a great timeline of when there were issues in that work zone. So it looks like there was an issue this morning, probably, 8:02 a.m., right around there, 8:04. So, and then again, looks like around maybe 10 o'clock or so, had another issue at 10. And so this just helps our people understand how those work zones performed. And then I've got some other dashboards that we use. This is kind of the inspiration for this. We do a lot of aggregations with speed data, so you can go back and check 7-day averages, and you can just pick a route, and then you can pick either like a area here, like if you want to do I-75, if you want to filter this, and then you can do cardinal versus non-cardinal direction. You can also narrow down by mile points, etc. So we've got kind of this overall page, and then we've got interstates and things. And then I'll end detected incidents. This is something we've been doing for a while. We finally developed a little dashboard for that. We compare here data with Waze Data, where Waze Data has like a report of a crash, and then we also have here data with 70% or less of free flow. We're now tracking that entire incident over its duration, and so you can see over the last couple of years we've detected 6,700 or 6,600 incidents, and the average duration of all those are 81 minutes, and the average queue length of each of those detected incidents are 2.34 miles. So that's good information as well, especially when you narrow those down to the work zones. And then I have another sheet that I'll share based on our project. I've got all of our storage numbers and different URLs and things. If you're interested in our project and using cloud computing and trying to understand our data, I can make those available as well. I actually have those in, I made slides just in case. And we have delivery emails for anytime there's a crash reported inside of a work zone, we make construction staff available or make that known to them immediately through delivery emails you can subscribe to. We also do per county summaries every 6 hours. If there are work zones with speeds of less than 25 miles an hour, we make those available to the people subscribing to that county. And then we also do one interstate alert where it lets you know when work zones are not performing well. It's 25 miles an hour or less for a matter of 10 minutes. And so we're making those, we're kind of tweaking those a little bit. but we're trying to make those public. That way, trucking companies and other commercial vehicles can subscribe to those. Right now, we're still testing those. They're a little too sensitive right now. We're picking things up a little too quickly. And then, like I said, all of our work zones include a half-mile queue, and which again goes into the whole detection thing and being able to detect traffic backup and queuing. And then those URLs are here, and I'll go ahead and post these in the chat on the webinar. But this is, you can give it a try. This is our Waze traffic. This is Waze traffic, your tool if you're a Waze partner. This is our work zone monitoring that I ran through the dashboard, 7-day traffic performance, detected incidents, and our project documentation. And all this is available to our construction staff and also consultants, contractors, etc. The goal here is to produce safer work zones, increase safety and mobility. So like our traffic management planners, the TMP training, which our folks are required to renew, I think it's every 4 to 6 years. We're getting ready to include all of this in their curriculum. Division of Construction obviously looks at this both at central office level and then at district level. They're starting to roll this out to the districts now, getting them involved. So we're really, this is the year we're really kind of, I say we're in development. We've got a lot of stuff in production, but we're still going to continue tweaking this and making it into like a full-blown solution for our agency and roll it out as an enterprise, kind of an enterprise adopted solution. So that's all I have. I will go ahead and post these in chat here as soon as I copy these over, but I will go ahead and turn it over back to somebody.
Hopefully my audio is back.
You are good. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, Greg, we heard you loud and clear. Go ahead.
I wonder if Greg's audio is going in and out. Well, let me go ahead. By the way, this is Vaishali Shah. I'm a program support contractor for the EDC-6 crowdsourcing innovation. So first of all, big thanks to Brian and Chris for going through all of the different content that they've developed to help their work zone teams. I did want to do a post introduction for Chris Lambert. Chris Lambert is, as you know, with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet with over 23 years of experience. Over the last 8 years, Chris has been working on the implementation and improvement of a real-time big data system. The system currently supports many use cases through the cabinet, including Traveler Information System GoKY, automated crash detection, snow and ice decision support, work zone monitoring, which he debuted today, and various other use cases. Chris has most recently taken an assignment as the technical lead for KYTC's performance management program, referred to as TRAC, Transportation Research and Analytics for Kentucky. We open the chat at this point to Q&A. On this new Zoom platform, there is a Q&A button where you can specifically ask questions, or of course you can add questions in the chat room. So there was a question asked, I think, that I'd like to propose to both of the presenters, and it was asked by Jawad Project. He noted that the challenges for agencies have been to have the staff look at this data and make appropriate decisions. Does your agency have processes in place to ensure that this capability is being used effectively by staff? And is there any way to filter these data to see the problem areas only on sections that don't meet a specific performance criteria, so that you're reducing the burden on the user from looking for problems to being alerted when problems take place? So Brian, would you want to go first in responding to that question?
Yeah, I can start with that. That's been a challenge for us too. Especially like looking at it in real time and having like our traffic management center operators monitoring things in real time. Especially like in the metro area where there might be already congestion on those corridors, but is this congestion worse than normal because of a work zone or an incident or whatever. There's a few tools in the Iteris ClearGuide platform. There's one called Speed Anomaly, and I kind of showed it when I showed like the blizzard conditions, where it's comparing the travel speeds at that time of day compared to what it would normally be at that time of the day. So it kind of helps maybe show that, hey, this congestion is normal or this congestion is worse than normal type of thing, and kind of highlight those. But it still requires some effort from the operator themselves to kind of really dig into that more. I think the route alerts with the email alerts that we have, like I said, we've only had it for about a month. I think that would be one that we'll hopefully be able to kind of fine tune and have it only send alerts for those things that really need an alert to be sent. And I think that'll be a little bit easier for our traffic operators to be able to actually monitor and ingest, as opposed to trying to look at the different pages of the Iteris ClearGuide tool. For the most part, how it's being used now is more by some of our work zone traffic monitoring folks, and they're not necessarily doing it like in real time. They're maybe looking at it like, the next day or maybe later in the day, but they're not, they kind of already know that, hey, I've got a handful of work zones that I'm kind of responsible for. I'm going to go into ClearGuide and kind of see how they're performing. I think that's where those email alerts will probably work better for them too, and that they won't have to be so proactive to things and having to dig for the information. Hopefully those alerts will kind of inform them that something's going on out of the system. Get informed that way, as opposed to customer complaints or something like that. But yeah, it's a challenge for us too. And even with the Waze data, like I said earlier too, trying to filter through some of that Waze data and eliminating some of the noise and getting to some actual events that are out there and stuff. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Brian. Chris, did you want to provide some thoughts from the KYTC perspective?
Sure. I mean, exact same issues. There was actually a lot of concern about jumping into this from our, some of our staff. I won't point fingers, but when you're relying on probe data and crowdsourcing data, there was concern about, what's the level of responsibility to respond to, a Waze crash report in a work zone and that type of thing. So again, filtering out those reports, trying to make sure they're extremely relevant, trying to make sure we have multiple data feeds that kind of verify each other is really important. This again, just like Brian was talking about, this is really for our folks to do after actions, and they get the emails from Gov Delivery, and that does give them a really good summary to say, hey, there is a crash. There's a traffic management center report of a crash, which we all know is going to be verified and in a work zone. So they do get that immediately, but the other emails they get are a little bit more summary based. And again, like the interstate emails, those were becoming too sensitive. So we're actually looking for, the reason we spaced that out to 10 minutes is to look for consecutive records of decline speeds. So now, instead of just picking up that first reading of 24 miles an hour and emailing somebody, we're waiting for consecutive records there. We want at least 2 readings that say 24 miles or something less than 24 miles an hour before we notify somebody. And then the county summaries as well. That's really for your county engineers. So yeah, same issues. I try to tell our IT people, these are construction folks. They do not want to sit and look at the dashboard all day long. They actually want to look at projects and get things built. So we're trying to balance that. And that's hopefully where the emails come in versus the dashboard. If they want to deep dive into their work zone and try to understand the details of that work zone, they can absolutely do it. But we're not forcing them into that tool just so they can understand certain speeds or certain crashes happening in their work zone. That's where the emails come in. So we're really trying to strike that balance between those two things.
Thank you, Chris. We had another question in that, are either of the agencies tying some of these performance measures that happen on a daily or weekly basis with work zone procurement and payment channels? And in other words, if there's a requirement for a certain level of service or other things, is there any tie-in that's being made or that may be made in the future?
Not for Minnesota. We've had goals of saying that we don't want to see delays greater than 15 minutes, but we'll kind of work with the contractor to maybe try to improve things. In some cases, like in the case of the one example I showed you with upwards of an hour, and things got a little better, but it was still probably a half an hour of delay. There wasn't a whole lot that really could be done at that point, and they just kind of had to bite the bullet and get through the projects and stuff, but they knew it was only about a two to 3 week project. But nothing tied to those type of performance criteria.
Thanks, Brian. How about Chris?
We're not really trying to tie this to level of service or even like for performance management, for example. I just started in that role. We will absolutely look at work zones and how they affect mobility, but we're not necessarily going to dig into to that work zone right now. Like I think our construction folks probably need at least 1 or 2 seasons to understand the data, understand what's there, and try to learn to interpret that for themselves. So this is just kind of easing them into that process, seeing how comfortable they are. And then also just things do happen. Like we had, matter of fact, in this I-64 project, we had a bridge where there was a hole in the bridge a few days ago. They had to shut down the interstate and things and repair that before they continued with the rest of the project. That was shut down for 3 or 4 hours, completely unrelated to the project itself, just complete coincidence. So obviously you don't want those type of issues kind of counting against your any kind of mobility scoring or things of that nature because of the something that happened inside the work zone that was unrelated to the work being done. But we'll probably move this into, we'll probably look at the effects that work zones have on safety and mobility scores, but we don't necessarily want to work on level of service and issues like that right now. We don't have any obligation that I know of to do that.
Thank you. So if anyone has additional questions, please do add them in the chat room. I know both of our presenters went rocket speed through a number of really great visualizations as well as use cases. So if you have questions, let us know. If not, I had one more question for Chris. Chris, you mentioned that there's an easy way for agencies to do work zone monitoring using the Waze viewer tool. Can you talk about the level of effort to set up that functionality and whether it has email capabilities so that, again, someone isn't monitoring work zones, but rather being notified when something is happening in that area?
Little bit of both. The traffic viewer tool is actually really easy to use. If you've ever created like a line segment on Google Maps or anything, it's point and click. You're gonna first of all you need to get into the Waze portal tool or the Waze portal where your organization is at, and then apply for a traffic viewer instance. Each instance of the traffic viewer can support up to 300 line segments. And then they allow you an unlimited number of instances. So you could have, let's say you had a couple regional offices and one regional office wanted to have a traffic viewer tool to themselves and the other one wanted to have one. You could actually do that. You can set up multiple polygons inside of that traffic viewer tool. And then once the polygons are established, that says, okay, we're going to monitor this area, this geographic area. And then you can go in, zoom in on the map, and give it a beginning and end. You're going to click on the beginning of that, and then you're going to click on the end of that line segment, and that gives you a full line segment that will sit and begin to be monitored. Now, again, those are Waze users as they pass through there, but they also give you the free flow speeds. So especially on interstates and really well-populated areas and stuff, like densely populated areas, this is a great tool to get up and running to understand exactly what's happening on that roadway segment. And we use these in different areas. We use this for, work zones. We use it for snow and ice. And so you can break those out per use case or based on geographic area, or like our traffic management center in Louisville has one instance of this, and then we have another for statewide. But yeah, it's just a matter of creating those line segments. And then over on the left, it gives you all the incidents that are occurring in there. As far as us receiving alerts in real time, they don't necessarily, Waze doesn't have their alerts tied to the traffic viewer, but they do have alerts for irregular traffic, and you can subscribe to that, and they will send you alerts on irregular traffic patterns. And, they will tell you what route, let's say I-75. They don't give you mile points because they don't know mile points, but they will tell you something like, like I-75 south, whatever. And you can look for those if you want to create like an Outlook filter or something to see things on the interstate. Look for all I-route type emails. You could look for those but they don't exactly tie the alert to the traffic viewer tool, but they do have both of those functions you can utilize. And that's a really quick way to get up and running. I mean, you can create a line segment in just a few seconds with the traffic viewer tool once it goes live. I mean, it's literally just create segment and then click on the beginning point, ending point, and it creates a line and it's just there. It starts to monitor. So 2 minutes later, you're getting data from that line segment.
Thanks, Chris. Nate Dashmuk has asked, I guess he commented, Chris talked a bit about integrating Waze data with icon data for real-time work zone impacts. Can both Chris and Brian talk about any efforts their agencies are doing to integrate other real-time ITS device data from smart aero boards, radar traffic sensors, or other things to validate the crowdsourced data? Brian, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Yeah, we've done a lot with like the radar traffic sensors, having those in work zones. We've typically kind of done that more to be able to continue to monitor traffic speeds in the corridor and get those travel time signs deployed. We're starting to use more and more of like kind of the crowdsourcing data and just using the here data to do that, which kind of saves money on that those traffic sensors. I think what we found where we've kind of done both as we're kind of migrating from one to the other. I mean, we found them both to kind of respond quite well to the existing conditions out there. So I think especially on the higher volume corridors, I should kind of caution, certainly as you get off those higher volume corridors, then maybe the crowdsourcing data becomes a little bit more suspect, and that, if you don't have enough probes out there, you're not going to be able to accurately measure those speeds. But it does seem to be working really well for us, especially on the interstate system, and doing those comparisons has shown that it's that it's accurate. We haven't done a whole lot of validation on like some of the Waze data, but more closer to that here data. I guess another one that's kind of similar, but maybe not directly tied to the crowdsourcing. We did have a project at one point where we had smart aero boards that would, relay information about their current status and location, and when they're on or off, and if they're on, what direction the aero board is pointing, and feeding that information into 511 to kind of validate that there's a work zone out there. And we had a pilot project for that, but unfortunately it worked very well, but we just didn't have it kind of streamlined enough that it got into our regular operations quite yet. So that's something we're kind of still trying to go back and do to turn that pilot project into a more standard operations for us.
Thanks, Brian. Chris, did you have any thoughts on that integration of multiple device data?
Not really. We've certainly talked about it. We have the capacity to do it. Right now, our team has not been tasked with that. They've experimented with different devices and different work zones, but Icons does have, aero boards and some other devices that they integrate into their feeds. So when those are available, we certainly have them through that kind of consolidated feed. But we don't have other vendors, like independent aero board vendors or anybody that we would pull that in. We do pull in DMS, messages and things from our traffic management center and stuff, but we don't grab those aero boards and other devices.
Thank you. One other question I think I had for both of you is, in terms of accessibility and availability of all of these tools and the training, and that was sort of to Jawad's point, in the use of these tools, can you sort of talk about what efforts and what time is needed in terms of being able to access and make use of the Iteris Clear Guide tool, and then Chris, all of the dashboards and tools. And I know you already shared, so it seems as though all of the analytics that you've put forth for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet are ubiquitous in terms of accessibility. But Chris, you want to go first in terms of the
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything our team creates, or everything I should say, everything I create is open and accessible. So I've got a couple of really great data engineers, a couple of developers that put this data together for me, and all the snapping and the architecture and everything. And then I do all the output. And one of the requirements for us to utilize any kind of tool, whether it be Data Studio, Looker, Elasticsearch, whatever it may be, is that it be publicly accessible, which is why I love Elasticsearch, but I can't really use it because it's not completely open. So I've utilized Data Studio a lot. I'm also getting ready to utilize Looker more because you can do public facing dashboards there, but everything we create is public facing. Now, sometimes you run into some scalability issues because like Data Studio, it's not really made for 1 million people to hit that thing, but you can have a couple hundred people on there at any given time. And then so using Data Studio, I've kind of made this information available, sent it to Division of Construction, and then they can email it out to any of their, county district personnel. That way we don't have to worry about logins. I really hate that. I don't like having logins restricting people's use on tools. And we also have some of our consultants have found out this data is available, especially the 7-day traffic viewer, and they actually download. Data Studio allows you to export stuff into CSV. So we actually have a couple consultants that have started using this for speed studies and things that they do when they turn in proposals to do signal timing and different type of alerts. So we've got some people that are utilizing out there we never expected to, but yeah, we try to make everything publicly available. We don't necessarily advertise it. You're not going to see us put it out on Twitter, but we certainly put it out there for anybody, any of our partners and internal folks. That way there's as little restriction as possible to getting to the information they need to do their job.
Thanks, Chris. And Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, with ClearGuide, it's pretty much just an internal tool for the most part. We can share it with like our partners and such, but we have some restrictions to with the contract and who can access it. A lot of that probably was more from our own legal folks as opposed to Iteris themselves. But I mean, it's a public facing website. You could get to it from the public. We just, like Chris said, we don't advertise it, but we also don't necessarily kind of like accept applications for it either. So because you have to apply to get a user access to it and such, and we have to kind of restrict it to folks that have a business need for using it. We can certainly share data with the general public from it, but we'd probably end up running those reports. And some of it was kind of just concerns over misrepresentation of the data and stuff like that, and wanting it to kind of funnel through us. Plus, like some of our local partners, even though there's local data available in the ClearGuide tool, our legal people felt that this contract with Iteris was really between MnDOT and Iteris, and so we couldn't necessarily allow some of those other local partners on there, but they can actually sign up and through their own contract mechanism, pay to have access to it at like a reduced rate. They don't have to pay the same rate that we pay, but they can pay to kind of use the system if a local agency is wanting to kind of monitor some of their corridors and such like that. So as far as some of the training aspects of it go, it's actually pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy to use. I know in a quick demo, it might not seem like that. It kind of seems maybe a little bit overwhelming. But once you kind of dig into it, it's pretty easy to figure out. Usually what I would do, especially when we first got the program, is I'd maybe do like a half-hour demo and maybe show a little bit more how you get to some of those reports, and then just kind of let people have at it and kind of play with it, and they usually kind of figure it out. We did have Iteris come do an in-person thing prior to COVID, and did like an all-day training session, and really kind of got into the weeds for some of those more super users that were going to want to get into some of those more detailed reports and such. And I think folks found that was helpful. I think the challenge I find sometimes is that I'll hear like especially in some of our other districts and stuff like that folks are really wishing they had an ability to be able to monitor what kind of delays they have out on their system, and I'm like, we've got this tool, just use it. So I think they become overwhelmed by it because they maybe see the 20-30 minute demo and they just think, oh geez, it's going to take me like forever to try to extract the data from it. But as you saw at the very beginning of my demo, when I quick ran a search on that county road parallel to the interstate, I can see pretty quickly what kind of traffic impacts there are, within just like a matter of a few minutes. But I think it just seems like it's too daunting to start with. So a lot of people get kind of scared away from it because they're already, got a million other things on their plate. But so that's been probably our biggest challenge, is just getting people to get comfortable with it and actually give it a try. But once they try it, they do seem to be able to figure it out quickly, and they like it.
Thanks, Brian.
That did kind of bring up a topic there in terms of sharing. If I can jump back in, we do have agreements with Here and Waze where we can share derivative data. So you're not allowed to expose their full data feed, their full schema, but we do have agreements to allow us to create like dashboards and things like this and report out that data. So that's important to remember too when you're negotiating with these folks, these vendors, whether it's Enrix or Here, or whoever, if you're wanting to use it on the public facing type of map or dashboard, you may want to make sure to have that in your contract to say, hey, we're gonna share, maybe our roadway system and maybe our district county route mile point and linear referencing system, but it's gonna be your miles per hour reading that we show, that kind of stuff. So that's something else to consider and just think about Waze data, et cetera. So all of those have certain restrictions.
Thanks. One other question. Both of these programs have significant variety of data. How or are you guys aligning that with the work zone data exchange and as the data exchange evolves over time? I don't know if Chris or Brian, you guys want to go first? I see Brian unmuted. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're doing a work zone data exchange project with our 511 data. But we're really not, incorporating this Here data or Clear Guide data into that overall system. We're just pretty much using it more for internal use. So, 511's already got its own capabilities of tracking the various incidents and work zones that are out there and is providing that into that work zone data initiative feed, but there's nothing coming from Clear Guide.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
And Chris?
Yeah, we're doing some, I'm not sure if Work Zone Data Exchange allows for speed data, but we are using, that was part of that loop back that we do. We pull data from our site manager system, but again, which is the contractor payment system. But some of that data needs to be enhanced with, better beginning and ending mile points or lane closure information, that type of thing. So that's where our traffic management center comes in. We're trying to combine the best of these, two worlds together, where we pull data from site manager system, hand it off to traffic management center. They enhance that. And part of that enhancement, we've been doing workshops now for a couple months, is to bring us into compliance with the work zone data exchange specification and try to maximize the amount of fields and things that we use for that exchange. So we just got through several rounds of workshops with our vendor, which is the Trimark facility. They also manage our software, our data entry software. They're going to make some enhancements there to further enhance that work zone project data we get from construction, make it WZDX compliant, and then that will feed back into our system. And then our GIS developer, one of my data engineers, he will take that information and push that back out in a work zone data exchange compliant format. So yeah, we are working on that. We're working in that direction to try to maximize the use of that work zone data exchange specification.
Thank you. I think that's it for questions. Any last call? And then if we could go to the next slide. Thank you very much, Chris and Brian. One of the things we'd love to hear from the folks that are in attendance is what new topics do you want to hear about? Is there something you guys are doing that you want to share with regard to crowdsourcing? And then two sort of performance questions for this webinar. Would you recommend this to peers, and was the information useful? So Adam, if you could go ahead and put up the polls. It's a single poll, it seems. And I don't think that the Zoom webinar platform allows for real-time updates. So we appreciate you completing the questions. You may have to scroll down for those last two questions on usefulness and likeliness of sharing this information with others. Thank you very much. As you continue to fill that out, I don't know, Adam, if you can move on to the last slide. or whether we have to wait. There we go. And so we just wanted to remind everyone there is a website, and on the website there are a lot of resources such as a table of, I don't know, maybe 40 or different agencies and how they're applying crowdsourced data. There's some FAQs. There are case studies, Kentucky being one of those case studies. And if you're interested to subscribe to our newsletter, it's there. And then finally, we do want to remind you that the new crowdsourcing course in a box is now accessible and available. If you have a region or a state that would like delivery of the course, the FHWA Everyday Counts innovation team is able to support that delivery, whether in person or online. The course is modular, can be delivered at a high level for in as little as an hour and a half, or could be extended to a full day workshop conversation. So if you're interested in the course, please go ahead and click on the link. I believe Adam is going to be putting it into the chat room. If not, I can get it in one moment. So that is about it for today. Thanks everyone for attending, and special thanks to Chris and Brian for taking time to share their expertise. All right, and here I will go ahead and put the final one, which is to request a course. Give me one moment. Oh, I'm having trouble putting that in. I don't know, Adam, can you add that? Oh, yeah. There we go. Adam's gone ahead and done it. So perfect. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thanks, Vishali. Thanks to all of our presenters today.
And with that,
Yeah, thanks
I
everybody.
think we're done. Thanks, Adam. I think we can close the webinar now.